But you mentioned Jynxzi on Reddit, for instance. People will shit on you and say, he's ruined the game. The Jynxzi clones are ruining the game. He's so toxic. He's so negative.
I'm going to get it out of the gate straight away. Cheating in Siege, a problem, yes, but it's everywhere. It's not just Siege. We're seeing cheaters in CS, Valorant. I can't scroll TikTok without seeing a Valorant cheating live stream.
Us more than anyone want the game to obviously do well. It's my fucking full-time job. If Siege goes to shit, I'm fucked.
3, 2, 1. It's episode 18 of the Siege Show, presented by Jake and Guzz. And negativity, again, the talking point. It's all about negativity when it comes to the world of Rainbow Six Siege. Unfortunately, another episode where there's really not a whole lot in terms of esports. We're still very much in that sort of dry spell, Guzz, but we've got some interesting talking points when it comes to the state of Rainbow Six, the game, and where it's at the moment in terms of servers, in terms of cheaters. That seems to be the major talking point at the moment on Reddit, around socials. Some of it rightfully. I think you never want to shy away from the negative things. We're not shills. And some of it's also just completely overblown. And you've got, once again, certain creators that come into this and they want views because negativity brings views. And we're here to say we want views too. So we'll talk about that.
we're gonna be hypocrites. I know I didn't write it down, but we may as well get some of the positivity out the way. Just out the gates. Jynxzi continues to be an absolute content machine, and we had one of, if not, the biggest, 1v1 content over the last couple of days. Of course, he hosted Shiko, Bolo, only went to 2 maps, which probably hindered the viewership a little bit, but in the end, I think it peaked over 170, maybe close to 180,000 viewers just on Jynxzi's channel. And the game, the category as a whole, with Bolo stream, Shiko stream, all the watch parties, ended up eclipsing every other category outside of just chatting on Twitch, even beating out Tarkov, who love farming their drops whenever a new wipe comes. So very impressive from him. And as much as I know some people are going to jump out and say, well, it's not Siege, it's Jynxzi, you have to, I think, at some point recognize that it's both. People would not be interested in Shiko and Bolo 1v1ing in Siege if it wasn't Siege, I don't think. So very impressive for him to pull those kinds of numbers, and shows that a lot of people still are very invested in the game and in the content space as well.
I think that my view on that is I agree. I think, are you really going to go and get fans from Counter-Strike or League of Legends and be like, oh, I'm going to go watch this? It's Siege. People who are watching it like it because it's Siege. Obviously, they also like Jynxzi, they like Bolo, Shiko, etc. But these are people who predominantly like Siege and consume Siege as content. You might obviously have, especially when it gets that high, people who are just curious what the hell's going on.
Like, what is this?
Why is Siege on the top of the Twitch page? But the vast majority are people who like Siege. And then that makes you go, okay, why can't we get that level of viewership for things like Six Invitational, for majors, for just the esports in general? How do you capture that audience? Is it just... And that's where I also agree. I think Jynxzi is a big part of that, and what he's been able to do. He already averages 30 to 40k single-handedly, and then you add on the fact that he's got Shiko and Bolo, the entertainment factor of the 1v1. There's no reason why, obviously, it's gone that high. So it's a whole lot of differentiating factors. I'd love to see, is there a world in which the Rainbow Six esports team, whoever's in charge, can somehow get Jynxzi involved and do these things, maybe on a... I don't even know what you would... maybe at a more professional level, like Jynxzi's 1v1 sponsored by Rainbow Six, and you do it at big events or something, and I don't know, try and incorporate it basically and get these people more introduced to the esports fandom, which, yeah, look, it's a positive aspect for Siege, and which I think everything surrounding Jynxzi is typically quite positive. I mean, like most things.
Well, and this is where I know we're going to get into this a little bit later in terms of the state of the Reddit and probably the community more generally. But you mentioned Jynxzi on Reddit, for instance. People will shit on you and say, he's ruined the game. The Jynxzi clones are ruining the game. He's so toxic. He's so negative. I mean, I don't watch him that much to know if he truly is deep down. But for instance, I watched... before the 1v1, the day before, he was playing in like a console tournament. He's hosting these tournaments that are like 25k or whatever. I don't know how often, but like that was super entertaining, and they're taking it quite seriously. The level of play was quite good, and he was, as far as Jynxzi goes, actually acting quite normal during those streams. So I thought it was fine. So it's weird that I think it's again like sort of that elitist band of the community sort of wants to push back on Jynxzi, despite what the positivity that I think he's bringing, and bringing attention to the game in a positive light, which so many creators have completely shit the bed on in the last a couple of years.
Yeah, I think one of the main ones is obviously some of the issues plaguing Siege at the moment. Server issues, a lot of people complaining about cheaters and cheating running quite rampant, which I'm going to be completely honest, that's not a Siege thing. I'm going to get it out of the gate straight away. Cheating in Siege, a problem, yes, but it's everywhere. It's not just Siege. We're seeing cheaters in CS, Valorant. I can't scroll TikTok without seeing a Valorant cheating live stream just about every time. Like, it's,
I mean, that's the funny thing.
and people talk about Valorant as if it's like this game that there are no cheaters.
Yeah.
Brother, I watch them.
Not
on purpose.
That's the thing. Like, Valorant probably, on a percentage base, does have less cheaters, and Riot's actually adding Vanguard to League soon, so we'll see if that has an immediate impact there. But you go into a dedicated Valorant community, I bet you, and I've seen them, I've seen threads and I've seen comments on TikTok, Reddit, etc., where people are still complaining about cheaters. So the cheaters are everywhere. Again, proportionally, there would be less there, and I think Riot have done a better job than most in taming it, but they haven't eliminated it. And so, yeah, if you walk out of the Siege bubble, you know that it's kind of prominent everywhere.
What's your experience been like this season?
It's been shit. Like, to be blunt, it has probably been... It's so hard to not put on rose-tinted glasses and say that, you know, this has been the worst season, but it probably has for a really long time, at least in immediate memory, because they introduced, you know, some systems back maybe last year or the year before where they had like the multi-build system or however they phrased it, and it made it more difficult. And there were a couple seasons there where it was very, very rare to find cheaters. And now we've kind of regressed to pre that point where everyone's kind of just running around with walls and closeting and stuff. So it is poor at the moment. But I really, really hope that people don't fall into the trap of thinking that the development team don't care and that they're not working on solutions, because people are going to find out very soon that it's an ongoing process and there's going to be improvements coming. Yeah,
and again, I'm not upset at people for being upset about cheating. It's shit. No one likes cheaters, but it's in every game. This is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's an issue in Siege, and we all want it to be fixed, and we obviously all want Ubisoft, the developers, to better the experience as quickly as possible, and it is an issue, and certainly is an issue that is plaguing Siege more than like your Valorants, for example, right? No one is denying that, but I hate seeing this like almost mob mentality where it's like, oh, I'm quitting Siege. Where are you gonna go? You're gonna go to Counter-Strike? I've already been toggled on in Counter-Strike multiple times in CS2. Like it's rampant there, especially once you start getting to the higher ranks, higher ELOs. I've had games where we're winning and then some guy just toggles on and he just starts running around with the scout and it's spin botting.
You can't even escape the major open calls that are happening at the moment. There's already been a bunch of, you know, threats of cheating or suspected cheating in major qualifications. So you think you're going to be able to escape it in fucking matchmaking? Absolutely not. So yeah, I don't think quitting Siege is obviously going to be a solution, because Siege is such a unique game and it's going to be difficult to replace that. But there have been greater discussions spawned about, you know, boycotting the game and whether or not that would actually have an impact in improving the problem.
I mean, like, then the cheaters just win. I mean, you're boycotting the game to accomplish what? I mean, if you boycott the game, are the developers and the anti-cheat team going to work harder? They're already working hard. It's going to make no difference. So I'll say I see the frustration and I agree with the frustration of everyone. I think you can just redirect it in a better way. The server issues as well, plaguing Siege at the moment. Again, I will probably say less so than the cheating issue, that it is a bit more of a Siege problem at the moment. I mean, I don't typically see more server issues with like your Valorants and your CSs, other tac shooters, for example. I don't really see server issues being a thing. So obviously this is very much a bit more Siege related. We can take the shill glasses off here and say, yeah, this is a bit of an issue. And
well, I mean, that's what I want to pose to the community. I mean, you guys watching at home, right? Because I was saying to you before we started, my personal experience seems to be far from the typical experience at the moment, right? So I've played, you know, a decent couple hundred games or whatever this season, a decent chunk. I've had one game, it was on Emerald Plains, and we were versing obvious cheaters, and I think they were doing some kind of exploit. They gave me super high packet loss. I got DC'd. I couldn't rejoin. But that seems to be quite different from what most people are experiencing, which is like the matchmaking's broken. I had that once. I was duo queuing late at night and immediately was able to just remake the lobby and re-queue without fault. So I'm interested to hear, like, is this platform specific. It sounds like potentially it's more based on console.
Region?
So maybe that crossplay is fucking that up. It could be region. So like the physical server locations causing problems, and Australia might be a bit more immune to it.
Yeah.
It could also be like timing. So like more traffic. But yeah, I'm really a little bit perplexed because I'm seeing all this stuff and I'm like, well, it's not really happening to me. As we're talking about this over the last couple of hours, I think people have actually found a very obscure solution to try and resolve it, which is by sitting in the customization of one of your operators. Apparently sitting in that menu is like a solution for this current problem. I don't know how true that actually is and whether or not that's longer term, but yeah, there's a lot of obscure weird things in Siege. That seems to be one of them. So yeah, if you're experiencing that, tell me what's going on, because it's been a very different story for me.
Yeah, and this brings it back to really the Reddit response going on Reddit. I think you put out a tweet out as well, didn't you?
Yep.
Wanting to scour Reddit for, basically podcast ideas and what are the talking points and what are, I guess, the community kind of talking about. One of the biggest posts, if not, I think maybe the biggest post on the Rainbow Six Reddit is a non-recommendation on Steam, which says, don't buy the game right now. Servers have been down for over a week straight, which, I mean, servers have been down for over a week straight. I mean,
it's not my experience, but I've seen enough people complain that I think that is valid.
You could say servers have been up and down for over a week, but the fact that's making it sound like there's been no ability to play for 7 days. And that's obviously not true. That's not factual. And the game is essentially unplayable. I mean, again, is that factual for you? Have you been experiencing?
Not for me, but my experience has been different.
Ubisoft doesn't care. I mean, that's subjective. I'm not even going to bother. They refuse to ban hackers.
That's bullshit.
I mean, like, they refuse. Can you imagine? There's someone at Ubisoft. He's like just watching this guy cheat or has vision of this guy cheating. He's like, nah, leave him.
Well,
like, what?
There's a genuine pocket of the community that genuinely
so they can continue to buy cosmetics.
They don't ban
cheaters. Don't really buy cosmetics though, because
they just exploit the cosmetics anyway. So this is a ridiculous argument, and so on Siege you can open on your notifications obviously, and you get told when one of your reports leads to a sanction. My entire feed at the moment is filled with people getting done. So the main issue is your ability to inject the cheats. If you report someone, especially if you do it through Ubisoft support with a proper ticket, they get fucking nuked. I have the overwhelming majority of reports I have made, especially of obvious cheaters, they get nuked. So the idea that they're being given like a get out of jail free card from Ubisoft is just absolutely ridiculous. So
I'm just reading some of the comments here, which at least the very first comment says that they disagree with the hacker thing, which again is just complete rubbish. That's insane to think that Ubisoft don't want to ban hackers. And it just basically says that the anti-cheat is garbage, which it probably is, to be completely honest. Most anti-cheats are garbage. But it depends on what... Do you consider the anti-cheat garbage, or do you consider the hacking community has just gotten so much better and more advanced? It's probably a bit of both.
It's just an arms race.
And yeah, it is an arms race until one day developers figure out a way to basically make their files inaccessible. But then how do you do that without allowing people to play the game? That already becomes an issue in itself. Yeah. So, look, we'll probably...
I mean, the point that the OP was making here was that on console, right? If you get done for zimming, like keyboard and mouse, you don't get immediately banned. You get sanctioned over time. I guess that is a fair argument to an extent. However, this is a pretty experimental measure in terms of mouse trapping, so I suppose they didn't want to implement it and then it was shit and you just mass ban all these accounts because that would have created a shitstorm. So maybe over time we'll see that lead to bans. Apparently Zim creators are already finding workarounds on the software side, so again it's an ongoing arms race and it's going to continue to be something that Ubisoft are going to try and work on. So yeah, it's very frustrating. Servers, cheaters, and
I do want to make it pretty clear that I think everyone's frustrations are valid. I'm not trying to devalid community outcry. I think that everyone's opinion is just as valuable. If you're having a rough time in terms of server stability, cheaters, etc., I believe you, because I think there are instances where you might have someone who's not ran into any issues and then someone who has just sort of copped everything. So there is someone out there that's probably copped all of these issues. That's definitely the reality of it. I think that a lot of it, though, again, the anger is just needing to be redirected a little bit. Like this whole talk of quit Siege, boycott Siege, especially from creators who have got an influence, that's just bullshit.
You know what I would love to see, and we don't see it enough in gaming, is instead of directing this frustration and anger and energy towards the development teams who are already fucking trying hard, and this is such a complex and difficult issue.
Yep.
Can we see like these creators and these people with brains? Can we just like fucking smash the cheaters? Like, why are we not seeing more? You remember in Counter-Strike there was that guy that was making like fake cheats that like fucked people's games up and did all crazy shit. Why are we not seeing that in Siege? Why are we not seeing people go out and like target these discords and maybe like vigilante kind of behavior against the cheaters? I would much rather see that anger directed at the people that are actually causing the harm, as opposed to the development teams who are trying.
It's just a lot easier, isn't it, though, to just attack the developers and the anti-cheat team, probably. And it's just easier.
Yeah, it's a cheap shot.
Like, I don't know if I have the willpower. Most people probably don't, to go on a hunt to track down cheaters.
I should be careful with what I say. I'm not like trying to advocate that everyone runs around like Batman and does crazy shit.
No one likes cheaters.
I'm just saying in a theoretical world.
No one likes cheaters. No one likes hackers. And in an ideal world, if we had the capabilities to stop them a little bit more on our own terms legally, then yeah, maybe there's a world in which people would do that. But I don't even know where you would begin with that, and I wouldn't be advocating for that. In an ideal world, there just comes a time when anti-cheat measures are just superior and win the arms race over actual cheating. My honest opinion is that eventually, don't know when, somewhere in the future, that will happen. I don't know how you do it, but I think it will. We'll leave it there, because like you could just talk about cheating and not just Siege, but games in general for ages to come.
All I'll say is I'll end this point, and I know I teased it a little bit before. It's a constant battle. They're constantly working on it, and there's stuff coming. So just I gotta be careful with what I say, because it is.
I want to know now,
because it's information that I've heard, and it may not be true, but we'll come back to this in a couple months.
So you can say then for certainty that Ubisoft do indeed want to stop hackers.
Well, of course they fucking do. I don't have to know insider info to know that.
All right, let's go and have a look at our next topic, which is going to be about Nøkk. Which is probably quite random, to be honest.
A little bit random.
Out of the first discussion into the second. So this stemming from a discussion with Varsity, is it time to buff Nøkk? My answer is no. I don't know why you'd be sitting there going like, yeah, Nøkk needs a buff. Do you think Nøkk needs a buff?
I think Nøkk could benefit from a buff. I wouldn't necessarily be against an outright improvement.
So more quality of life?
Potentially, but I don't think that the proposed buff is very practical. I don't really like the proposed buff.
Is this the proximity-based traps, alarms, banshees, concussions, dreadbinds?
Yeah.
Anything that's got some kind of electrical nature to it, anything that's non-mechanical.
Yeah, so back in Year 6, Season 1, they actually trialed this on the test server. They gave Nøkk the ability to basically trigger her gadget, and then she could walk through all that proximity-based traps and gadgets. As I kind of anticipated, didn't make it through to the live build, and there is a reason for that. And it was a little bit weird when I saw this post and I saw the community was like absolutely loving it. I was like, guys, you got to remember.
Of course they're going to love it, though. It's a buff.
You've probably made 1,000 posts this last year about how you hate the TDM meta. Could you imagine adding Nøkk into an environment where traps are quite strong against denying that playstyle, and Nøkk, all she needs to do is press one button, find an entry point, and she's in sight. Now, that will not be particularly strong in a 5-stack environment, I don't think, and definitely not a comp environment where people are aware of what people are holding, and it's very difficult for Nøkk to find that free entry into sight. But you throw a Nøkk like that into a common game of Siege, like a solo or duo queue sandbox environment, every single round, Nøkk is just going to fucking walk into sight uncontested and just cause havoc, which exacerbates this meta that we're in and is only going to further encourage attackers to not open walls and play tactically. So I just don't think it's a particularly good buff, and it's certainly not the right time for it.
Don't have much to add to that. You've hit pretty much every single point on the head. The only thing I was going to say in terms of a caveat is a lot of the discussion, at least in our last couple of episodes, have been about how strong defense has been. Then maybe something like a Nøkk can help alleviate some of those concerns, but probably just doing it in the wrong way, I think, is the issue. And I think also if you were to buff Nøkk to those kind of levels, then it becomes a ban target. You just, especially on large maps like skyscrapers and stuff, you just don't even want to deal with it. Like, I think it just gets banned out. So What would you do? I guess I pose this question to you. In quality of life buff, rather than just straight buff, to Nøkk, that makes them a little bit more, I don't want to say playable, because I already think they're quite playable, but a little bit more viable without going over the top that they become like a ban target.
So I think Nøkk, to make her a little bit more viable, perhaps she can move faster while still remaining invisible on cameras. Because I don't know what the meta is going to look like over the next couple of months, but assuming that, you know, maybe Maestro gets more playtime, it's like Nøkk could actually therefore be quite a viable counter to that information gathering. I don't think it needs to interact with traps. That's probably my main issue. But perhaps if she could move a little bit faster while still remaining invisible.
Yep.
Because if she moves faster, she's louder and obviously doesn't have silent step anymore either.
Would you not then be able to just abuse that aspect and just say, okay, well, I don't really care about, like, you're almost just using it as a speed boost to increase your run and gun.
But traps would still work. So you'd still have the traps to directly counter that.
Directly slow them down.
Because if you allow Nøkk to counter traps, well, then you have to think about what counters would still exist, right? So I've listed a couple. You could still run mute. So for instance, you'd run mute near those traps. The mute would counter Nøkk, the hull reduction. So the traps would still work. I mean, that could be some interesting counterplay, but I don't think mute really needs an indirect buff at the moment. Lesion, obviously those guzz are now mechanical. But do we want to be in a meta where Lesion is must pick as well? I don't know if we really want that. Capcan's an interesting one. There's some to and throw whether or not he should be a counter. I guess technically he's like proximity, but he also isn't. So that would be a weird one.
But this is the thing though, where do you draw the line?
Adds some inconsistency. And then finally, a Rooney. I mean, a Rooney getting an indirect buff would probably be all right, assuming it interacts like a Capcan and actually still works. But yeah, I just am not a huge fan of that particular buff. But I wouldn't be against some kind of
you just don't know what it would be.
Adjust her, just tweak her a little bit, make her a little bit better.
You just don't know what it would be. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's quite difficult because when you kind of look at the operator, and I guess the same goes for Vigil too, where you've kind of got a goal in mind when it comes to their abilities, which is undetectability. It's hard to then branch off of that and add more layers to it. Like, you're just either going to be undetectable through some measure where it's avoiding drones or avoiding cameras. What more can you realistically then do without going too crazy? Because then if you start talking about, all right, well, Nøkk can now, be non-detected by traps and stuff. Well, then what about Vigil?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the changes recently have been to try and bring those two in line and make them a little bit more...
I mean, we hardly even see Vigil.
So they make a little bit more sense. But yeah, imagine Vigil then, as a result of the Nøkk buff, can dismiss, avoid claymores or air jabs. Those are the main two that I thought of. Then again, you're just only going to speed up the speed of the game, which people continue to complain about. So you can't have your cake and eat it too kind of thing, right? You have to... you have to think about the long-reaching, the far-reaching impact of changes. Like, would this make Nøkk better to play? Would it make the attack a little bit stronger? Would it be a cool buff? Yes, 100%. I'm not saying that it's not an exciting buff that would rejuvenate the attack a little bit, but it just has so many far-reaching consequences, particularly in the meta that we're in at the moment, that it's just not a good idea.
I look at Siege, and you can disagree with me if you want, but when it comes to operators and their abilities, they are meant to be, my opinion, quite simplistic in their approach. They're meant to kind of do one thing, maximum two things, but it should...
Or two Royale do everything.
And that's kind of the issue, I guess, with the power creep that is
exactly
new operators, and as they've come out, you go back to the OG operators, and it's like, break floor, throw gas, avoid camera, you know what I mean? Everything is quite simplistic, that it is just... let's just do this one thing. Now, a lot of these operators are like multiple charges and you can do this and that, and there's versatility, and that's great, but that then indirectly nerfs all of the OG operators that can't do everything indirectly and only have one set way of doing something. And I think that's kind of the issues with, when you think about an operator that's like, its main gadget is to avoid detection. But then you've got all these other operators that can do this, this, and this, and that, and that. It gets kind of left in the wind. And then this is the problem, is the means to then buff it is say, okay, well then it's not just avoid detection. Now it's also avoid traps. So now it's two things. And then where do you draw the line in terms of the power creep for operators in Siege?
Yeah, and it's like, we don't like Tuber out because he doesn't have any counters. Well, then what's the counter for Nøkk? in terms of gadgetry. There is none.
Yep.
So
Yep.
unless, again, there would be like the mute interactions and all that shit. But yeah, it would start to get quite messy.
I think Siege is actually probably at a point where new operators need to be a little bit more simplified and streamlined, and maybe some of the more recent ones should get looked into in terms of the fact that they can just do so much. Because I think that if you want Siege to be like old Siege, then that's probably what you want, more so than buffing everything out the wazoo. Next topic of conversation is a little bit esports. In fact, it is pretty much esports. The R6 South Breach, which featured a very strange loss for G2 against G-Who. Of who we don't know.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. G2 entering that bracket. Pretty sure this was the first round. They lost 2-7, 3-7 Consulate Nighthaven Labs. And yeah, pretty shock result. Obviously, you can quite quickly make the argument that G2 are not going to take this tournament particularly seriously, but a 2-0 loss against a random team is very, very disappointing.
Yeah, that's strange.
And off-brand. And on the back of that discussion, then re-emerged in terms of promo relegations and what position that should have, if any, inside of the ecosystem.
My interesting thing about it is there's always pretty handy excuses. Us as commentators would say, well, it's a one-off, or they weren't trying. It's a tournament that they didn't value as much as others. So you can throw them out in spades, any kind of excuse. If you're a G2 fan, don't stress. It's not the end of the world. But there's a lot of people that would look at this result and say, well, there are no excuses. It's best of 3. And as soon as you're in that server, most players are typically trying. And also, if your innate ability is better than the opposition, which I guess in this case it should be, you should be able to get the job done. Now, if it's a best of 1 and it ends up like a 7-5 on club where the other team started defense or something, there's probably less cause for concern. But the fact that you've lost a best of 3 with a map veto process, and you got smashed in these maps, 7-2 on Consulate, 7-3 on Labs.
And they didn't win an attack on Labs.
I mean, that's quite concerning. And yeah, basically 6-0'd in the first half on Labs. So a whitewash there. Couldn't get a single attacking round. And for me, that's more concerning than anything, is if you can't break down G-Who's defense, then holy shit, you got some troubles ahead of you. So, look, very easy for them to just be like, nah, we weren't trying. But you would know full well. I mean, how often do you play Siege and you're actually not trying? If you're going up against a shit team, do you, and I'm talking to you directly,
Why am I being put on the spot?
do you just suddenly go, I'm not going to try? I never agree with that sentiment.
I very rarely.
If I'm going to the local park,
I'm on the opposite spectrum. I try too hard.
yeah, if I'm going to the local park playing pickup game and a 12-year-old joins in, I'm dunking on him. I'm not going to be like, oh right, he's the boy. I'm dunking on him, and that's the mentality that they should have. If they've actually, and this is why for me it's a lose-lose for G2, is if they've gone in and they've tried, well, fuck, that's that's not a good look. No. And if they've gone in and they haven't tried, then that's a loser's mentality. So no getting away from this. I will say the fortunate thing for them is that it means nothing. In the grand scheme of things, the only thing it might mean is it's a wake-up call ahead of SI, for example, that, hey, maybe there's some issues here. Maybe we've got to work on some shit.
Anything, did you want to discuss more about promo relos or just leave that for now?
I think that
Or it's just too much of an isolated incident. I mean, there was, very briefly, there was some interesting discussion posed by Pengu, right? Where back in the day when you had to really fight, every game truly did matter. You didn't have to make the conscious decision as to whether it did or not, because there was always that threat of relegation. But then obviously counterpoint, orgs want safety, and that's always the tool and throw that esports on multiple titles continues.
We've had promo relos in the APAC system.
Did you like them?
Yes and no. You know why I didn't like it was because the way to get in felt too RNG. Because mainly because it's APAC, right? Because you've got so many different regions that win their leagues and then go into a playoff bracket and then you qual. Yeah. In an ideal world, you win your league, you get to be promoted. If you think of football, for example, they're getting in because they're winning the league and then they're going up a level. So I didn't like the fact. I'm thinking of Bliss, for example. How many times did Bliss dominate locally, go into the playoffs, and then for the APAC playoffs, promo relos and lose in a pretty choking fashion, and then they miss out on APAC for the year.
Yeah.
It's rough, even though they would have probably deserved to make it in. And then there were some teams that probably didn't deserve to stay in, but just managed to hang on and get a slot. So Look, in an ideal world, I think promo rallies is a good thing. I just don't know if we have the ecosystem for it right now. And we kind of tried it and wasn't that great. And also, as you said, orgs want that safety blanket too. Like no organization wants to pick up a team that has a threat of being relegated to a lower division where there's, so if an org would even pick up a team, they'd probably have some kind of clause anyway that they'd be out if their team got
the relegation
relegated.
clause.
Yeah.
Classic.
So last topic here for the main portion of this episode is kind of bringing us back to one of our earlier topics regarding cheating.
Full circle.
But this one a little bit more esport related. Tier 3 in Korea, which that actually surprises me. There even is a Tier 3 in Korea, to be honest, because like their Tier 1 is not that great. But apparently there were, 3 players that were violated, or 3 players violated competition. They weren't violated. They did the violating, and they got banned out. So the penalty, what does this say? The penalty is so weak that they need to be held to a greater account. What was the penalty?
So I believe the penalty in the end may have been like the minimum charge, which constitutes like something financial. It's a little bit murky, the details, obviously, because we're crossing language barriers, so it gets a little bit challenging in that regard. But this blew up a little bit in Korea. I saw plenty of the Tier 1 pros kind of tweeting about it, and like I saw comments regarding like the other 2 on the team, were they in on it? But it is an interesting discussion point, right? Because we've now had aces banned in Tier 1 late last year. We're now seeing them permeate and get caught in Tier 3, and I suppose it opens that box up, right? It's like, how many other motherfuckers out there are cheating at the highest or a higher level of play than ranked? Certainly a little bit concerning from the perspective of competitive integrity, but good that, these guys were clearly caught. I don't know the process in which that happened. I don't have any knowledge, but I suppose it must have been quite obvious because it seemingly happened quite quickly.
Yeah, I don't have much else to really say about it. It's not like we were able to watch it, see it, have any footage of it, other than just that it got brought out publicly, which is a good thing because you could easily just probably, especially Tier 3 Korea, they could have swept this under the rug. And I think the official Rainbow Six Korea account tweeted something out, and obviously Martin also put out that tweet. So
he translated for me, so that was
good
because I asked him. I was like, what happened? Because all the statements are in Korean. I can't read Korean, so shout out to Martin, who was quite helpful. Yeah,
well, I guess the hope is then this is I'd like to think a one-off.
Hopefully.
But you think about how many lower tier competitions, because I think it's very difficult to imagine that cheaters have been able to infiltrate Tier 1 just because there's too many eyes.
Aces did.
But then Aces did.
Well, allegedly. I don't know if that was actually confirmed.
Yeah, I mean, at least not to a level where I think it's like an inundation of cheaters, for example, at Tier 1. You might have one that's snuck in or something here or there. How? I don't even know, because like, we watch the games, I'm thinking of just Oceania League or even like SEA League, any of the leagues that we cover, and like you can tell pretty quickly if someone's cheating. Like we have observers, like we can see every movement, like,
and replay files,
like, and people are watching. It's not like you're just playing a scrim offline and no one's going to be watching you or checking your replay files. Like, so I'd be very surprised. I hope this is very much the lower end of the cheating at the of the esports level, and with that we'll look to close what's been a cheating episode. Fucking cheaters, man. Why? I just don't get it. Why? What do you gain out of cheating?
It is degenerates that sit in their little discords and cheat. Like, it's literally what it is. Like there's a.
Do they think they're good?
They're like these little communities that prop up and they just do it for shits and gigs. Like
I'm just trying to put my thought process. Like, I'm imagining a cheater who wins a game and he's gone like 10-0. Does he think he's good? Does he think he's done something?
I don't know. I think they just do it for
maybe Lil Bro does think maybe Lil Bro does think he's a little bit good.
I don't know.
But he's cheating. And yeah, I do agree. I think the reaction of it is probably the big one. Like, just pissing people off. It's trolling, right? Like, it's just essentially trolling, and the same way that people will throw games or be, explicitly toxic, for example. It's kind of a form of that.
And it's no surprise that, like, during the Christmas break, especially obviously when the employee team is probably at a skeleton crew, but also kids are at home, they get their Christmas money. What are they doing? They're spending $40 a week or whatever the fuck it is on cheats. Like, I was actually having a look at like one of the most popular cheat websites, and currently they don't even support Vulkan or AMD. Apparently AMD support's coming early this year. So imagine when that happens, that's probably going
Tell
to...
people this.
Well, they already know. They're already going on these websites and they already know.
See, that's the thing that, as well. It's like just how accessible it is and how easy it
Yeah.
is. You can just Google
And that
it.
made me think, right? If it's not possible on AMD at the moment, well, like, is there more that can be done on a chip manufacturing
Vulkan.
side to make it more difficult?
Instead of DirectX.
Yeah, can we just fucking nuke DirectX? Get rid of it. Vulkan's objectively better for 99% of players anyway, so...
Yeah, interesting.
I'm sure I'll probably piss people off who use DirectX, but I don't give a fuck.
I mean, you can use Vulkan as well in Counter-Strike. Which, I mean, I have tried it. I didn't notice a difference. So, I mean, if there's no difference other than maybe better anti-cheat support, you may as well just use it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But, well, I also don't know from a development standpoint if it's easier to just use DirectX when you're making your games. No clue whatsoever. But yeah, a bit of a spicy episode. I think with these, you know, it's always good to be honest. We're not going to sit here and just like be Ubisoft shills, Rainbow Six shills.
Yep.
If there's shit that's wrong, servers, yeah, need fixing. Get working on that. Cheaters, though, it's a rampant issue. Yes, in Siege, but also everywhere. And that's basically just the point that I wanted to kind of get across in this particular episode is that, yeah, I think everyone has a right to be upset. The state of the game needs improving. I think everyone's aware of that. People are working on it. But there's just a level of vitriol from some of the community where it's like, quit Siege. You know, like, don't spend your money, boycott this, do that. And it's just like, that's not needed.
I would summarize it like this. Reddit, TikTok, Twitter, wherever, it's not a fucking airport. If you want to depart, you don't have to tell anyone.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
Creators.
If you seriously want to have an impact and you seriously care,
Yep.
you stop playing the game, you stop spending money. You don't have to announce it to the
Don't
world.
put videos out on it, and then
it's like, move on.
Yeah, and there's
And if you want to enjoy the game equally, fucking do that. Like, there's no shame in it.
there's creators that are making content. You look at Jynxzi, hate him, love him. He's putting out the biggest content at the moment relating to Rainbow Six Siege. All the other content creators are basically just reposting news articles and development blogs and passing that off as content. It's rubbish. It's shit. If you don't want to play the game, don't like the game, don't want to support the game, don't want to make content for the game, then fuck off. And I'm not saying that because I think the game is in a perfect state. I'm just saying that it's just mindless whinging at this point. Me and you both agree. There are issues right now pertaining to the game, but we're not going to sit here.
Us more than anyone want the game to obviously do well. It's my fucking full-time job. If Siege goes to shit, I'm fucked.
Well,
So,
I'd say, well, just
you're
go to another
fucked
game.
I don't know about that. Not in Australia.
All right, let's end it there. Hopefully, the next Siege show episode can be a little bit more positive in light. Do you want to say, obviously, a big thank you to those that have made it this far. Love us or hate us. Let us know how you felt about this particular episode. Obviously, there's going to be division when it comes to these kind of talking points. I think we can all agree that we want to see Siege strive and succeed, and we want to see it in a better place. We want the servers fixed. We want the cheaters to be basically in jail. Screw them.
I was going to say something worse than that.
Don't. But hopefully we can, as a community, continue to maybe not overstep boundaries, try and find some positivity. And with that, we'll wrap things up. Obviously, we've got our Patreon exclusive coming up very shortly. We'll continue to touch on some talking points. What have we got in this particular...
We're going to be talking about Gabriel's message on the Discord, where he talks a little bit about Tuberau and how he's performing in comp at the moment. So
okay, that's an interesting one. And we'll probably go a little bit deeper as well into...
maybe talk some other shit. I don't know.
Talk some shit, yeah. If you want to find that, of course, Patreon link down below, up above, wherever it is. Make sure you hit the bell. Give us a like, comment on the particular episode if you liked it. If you like our honesty as well. I think we've been pretty honest in this particular episode. And we'll see you in the next one. Much love.